Voting is currently underway in the crucial swing states in the United States. Joe Biden is obviously leading with quite the margin against Donald Trump. And it's early to call out the elections. It's going to take another 24 hours. It's very important. India has a clear set of priorities for the upcoming presidency in the United States. India-US relations are extremely imperative. We've gone ahead and spoken about it so many times during so many broadcasts, especially with regards to the quadrilateral that has to be formalized, the Indo-Pacific region, strengthening and security and continuing the efforts to contain China and its expansionism. And that's what we'd be going ahead and discussing. And let's yet again rope in Shri Iyer over here. And Shri Iyer, I was just going through this article that has been posted just a few seconds ago in the Chinese mouthpiece that has come out on Twitter, going ahead and saying that perhaps with the Democrats leading and Joe Biden looking good with regards to becoming the 46th president of United States, things could look good between China and US, and there could be a leeway over there with regards to mending ties between both the nations. There has been a lot of conjecture, there has been a lot of talk that has been going on that Biden is not as strong, not as anti-China as Trump is. Perhaps his approach has been extremely soft. How do you make of things going ahead for the Democrats and the Joe Biden co-committee?
I have a more nuanced view on this. I don't think Biden is going to, just like that, abandon the policy that Trump took. For sure, the American public is very, very upset about the way this coronavirus has spread throughout the world. One of the questions that China needs to answer is how is it that it quarantined Wuhan from the rest of its own country, but it let people who had the virus or who were actually in Wuhan to leave for their destination? Could they not have done a better job of making sure that they were tested and they were found to be COVID negative before they allowed them to go back to their homeland?
Yeah.
So there is that question that keeps lingering, and that's not being answered by the Chinese. So I don't think Biden presidency will automatically mean a kinder, gentler attitude towards China, because the mountain of evidence of data that is there is the one that is going to be confronting them. And I don't think the Democrats are going to be any less easy on China than the Republicans. The one difference you will see is that the operating style between Biden and Trump are different. Trump is a businessman first, and he's a little bit more in your face. I mean, that is one of the things that the deep state, the establishment had trouble with, because he would get up at 4 a.m. in the morning or 5 a.m. in the morning and start firing tweets one after the other. And people felt that this was sort of not coming in the way that they were used to. I mean, anytime the president spoke, he didn't speak. It was the spokesperson of the party. There would be a White House press conference. Every day, sometimes there were press conferences. That is how the messaging was done before. And that gave some people a little bit of a heads up on things that were coming down the pipeline. All that went away. A tweet came out and that sort of set the day, and everybody was like forced to get up in the morning and try to follow what Trump was doing. All that will go back to the way it was before that if Joe Biden comes to power. But in my opinion, not much is going to change. China's, whatever the process that has been started by the Trump to try and, call out some of the violations, I think they are going to continue. The only difference I see is that perhaps Biden may have to explain still the role of his son, Hunter Biden, the fact that he was in a venture fund which is $1 billion strong. A lot of those questions will have to be answered very, very quickly, because it is the people will still want to know the truth. And just because that they voted for Biden doesn't mean that they're going to go along with every policy that he is going to do. And also there is always, this is just human nature, there's always resentment when you go back and raise taxes. So it is my conjecture, my take that Biden will only touch 400,000 plus annual salary income of a family for increasing taxes. Below that, he will leave it alone. In fact, you will start seeing a stimulus plan being put in place even in the next few weeks. That has to go on. That is regardless of who's going to be the president. And it's important also to note that in Senate, it is the Republican majority that will actually bring some balance into the decision making. The Democrats cannot run the table. They cannot just say, here, this is what we are going to do and run with it. That will not happen. So there will be some checks and balances.
Okay,
I'm
so
hoping that the hope,
but yes, but this is the propaganda that is being put forth by China in the hope that perhaps things could sort of resolve between between United States and China, but obviously not to the extent that China is hoping for. But Ambassador Deepak Vohra, let's also discuss the core team that is going to be part of Joe Biden's committee if he becomes the president. He is likely to become the president. So the big names that are coming out is Anthony Fauci, where Biden has gone ahead and time and again, recommended his name to have him as the infectious disease expert from the United States. There's also name of Antony Blinken. He's the sought out to be the national security advisor. Now there's and there's Jake Sullivan also. His name also is the security advisor. How do these characteristics? How do these people and their personalities and their characteristics are going to benefit India with regards to the US-India relationship?
It's very, very clear, as Mr. Iyer has said, at this point of time, the United States and its perception of the world is driven not by any kind of personalities, but by policies and by consensus. International responses to China, including in the United States, that I've been observing in the last 30 years, have gone through three phases, ma'am. First, there was envy and admiration. Wish we could do it too. That's what we all thought. Then exhilaration, particularly in Western countries. Cheap goods, easy loans, and of course, investment for developing countries. And then fury, anger. China is stubborn, expansion is dangerous, virus unleashing, deceitful. All these three sentiments are now coalescing into acute discomfort. So I don't believe that Mr. Biden would be able to reverse the present trend. And don't forget that outgoing President Donald Trump, if indeed he is outgoing, still commands a very substantial majority. He has tens of millions of followers on Twitter and whatever else in terms of the social media that he uses. He is quite capable of making sure that his policies, at least, are not about. His personality might fade from the scene, but it's going to be very, very difficult. Therefore, as far as India is concerned, ma'am, you can be fairly confident, you can rest assured that there will not be a reevaluation. The understanding across the board in the United States is that we need partnership with India if we wish to control that demon called China. That is across the board, whether you're a Democrat or Tea Party or liberal or Republican or whatever you are, China is enemy number one. In the mid-80s, when I was posted here, at that point of time, I think Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor will remember, Mr. Iyer will remember, Japan was perceived to be the enemy number one economically. And I remember these guys used to take Japanese television sets onto Capitol Hill and hammer them, break them and say Japan has to behave itself. And ultimately, Japanese car makers responded by setting up factories in the United States. So they found a way out. But with China, ma'am, I believe that the die is cast and it cannot be taken back. The Chinese can flatter themselves that we did this, we did that. The point is no one trusts them. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the highest and 1 is the lowest in terms of trust, China is minus 50.
Okay, all right. So that's Ambassador Vohra, who's gone ahead and obviously negated everything that China has been putting out, proposing, allowing those ties to become better between United States and India, not happening. But Ambassador Pradeep, we take a look at Joe Biden and his kind of politics over here in the United States, and obviously the foreign policy is going to go ahead and build furthermore if he becomes the president over there. He is not looked as a far leftist. He is somebody somewhere in the center of the left, and Nancy Pelosi camp is something that he keeps away from. What do you make of the internal politics, and how is it going to impact the policies with India?
Thank you, Megha. The president of the US is the head of state and also the head of government. So he has tremendous power, officially also. And what has happened in the last few decades is that a lot of powers which were vested earlier in the Congress, in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, over various presidents, some of these powers have been drawn towards into the White House, into the administration, and in the sort of the seat of the president. And that has gone unchallenged because on many occasions it was the same party in power. So the assimilated and accumulated powers of the President of the United States is very, very vast compared to most other countries because of these reasons. It's only when the Senate is from a different party, or the House of Representatives is from a different party as compared to the President, then there is some good amount of checks and balances. Now, having said that, the Secretary of State is a very important player in this entire scenario, very, very important in the US. So also are the other, cabinet posts like the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense. So what does, India have to do? We have to start looking at all these candidates one by one. We have to start looking at what their past statements have been vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis Kashmir, vis-a-vis US-India relations, and start looking, like you have Susan Rice, who may be the Secretary of State.
Okay.
You have John Kerry coming back again as advisor in some capacity. He was earlier the Secretary of State. You have Thomas Donilon, you have Anthony Blinken, and you have Julie Smith. So all these candidates, so many candidates' names are now being discussed.
Yeah.
So I guess it is about time for NewsX to start discussing each of these candidates also, and start understanding what their track record so far has been, and how can we envisage working with them going ahead.
Right, absolutely. And in fact, if you could go ahead and deep dive into what Jake Sullivan could bring onto the table, and there's also new information pouring in that of when it comes to Anthony Blinken, he's more of a guy who is very strong when it comes to his diplomacy, and that's going to be of crucial importance with regards to dealing with diplomats from the Indian side, isn't it? And Ambassador Deepak Vora, you wanted to comment on this?
Just want to say, ma'am, there has always been a certain consistency in United States foreign policy as far as external enemies are concerned. Recall, please, all of you, that they jumped into bed together with the Soviet Union during the Second World War. The moment the war ended, the Soviet Union became enemy number one because of ideological reasons.
Yep.
So whether it was a Democratic presidency or a Republican president, everybody knew that the Soviet Union and its ideology had to be consigned to the dustbin of history. That great achievement was done by a character called Ronald Reagan. The Soviet Union collapsed. So when America gets together and decides this has to be done, they do it, ma'am. It cuts across party lines. And I can tell you today, having been here for over 2 months talking about China, if anybody today would get up in a public forum and say, we love China, he'd probably be sent to the local psychiatric hospital. Nobody says that again. Here, more and more people don't refer to it as coronavirus, as we try to be to be politically correct. They all call it, forgive the expression, the goddamn Chinese virus. And I believe that is a very positive sign as far as the rest of the world is concerned, that they are going to cut China to size. Ma'am, America reacts very violently. The Japanese went and bombed Pearl Harbor. The whole country got together, and you know what they did to Japan.
Yeah.
Then this character called Osama, whatever, he destroyed some buildings in New York, and you know what they did to Afghanistan. The Americans are uncontrollable, the fire and fury when their vital interests are hurt, and China is going to see that very, very quickly.
Yes, that's
Those
true.
guys better wake up.
Absolutely. But also, Ambassador Pradeep, I wanted to continue with this comment that, you rightfully pointed out the nitty-gritties of the core panel that is going to be the deciding factor with regards to the security issues, with regards to defense, with regards to foreign policy issues, and key names that you've gone ahead and brought about. You brought about Susan Rice. How do you go ahead and compare with a personality like Mike Pompeo? He has made several visits. He has been very, very vocal, almost very similar to the Trump attitude that has been very on your face. And there has been a continuous fight that continues to happen between Xi Jinping and Mike Pompeo, and they have been calling themselves in each other names. How is Susan Rice different to Mike Pompeo? If we could just bring about a juxtaposition.
Susan Rice earlier was the US ambassador to the United Nations. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to sort of interact with her personally to any extent, so it will be inappropriate for me to comment about it. What I've seen from her readings is that she's a good officer, she's a good diplomat, and that she will probably grow into that role. What I see the difference between the administrations is, like Ambassador Deepak Vora mentioned, vis-a-vis China, for example, the Trump administration and Mike Pompeo, the statements they have made in the past few months have been seminal. They have sort of laid out the path ahead on how to deal with China in very clear, categorical, black and white terms, which is declaration of Cold War. Now, the Biden team may not have that sort of appetite to continue with that attitude or outlook or stance to declare a sort of Cold War and to bring it down, because currently the statements being made, which I have heard, Kamala Harris, I have not heard a single statement on this subject being made by her during the entire campaign. The statements which Biden has made have been sort of not at all so firm or strong. They have been more tending towards conciliatory sort of statements or coming to agreement, negotiations, discussions, and almost bordering on appeasement. So whether the nuances, once the administration takes over, continue in that way and they try to give a long rope to China, or they pursue the line of the current administration, because the strategic community here in the US is very clear in their thinking that this is threat number one for the US and terrorism is threat number two. Japan has faded from the list as a significant threat. Europe is no longer there in that list as a significant threat. So those are the immediate concerns. So how they deal with that, to what extent do they put their money, where their talk is, or how much do they walk the talk is to be seen.
Okay, how much do they walk the talk is to be seen. Sumit, I'll come to you, and then Shreya, I'll come to you to give 20 seconds each. Biden has gone ahead and reiterated his support when it comes to the TikTok ban, when it comes to Hawaii. The Indo-Pacific policy of President Trump has witnessed support from the Democrats and Joe Biden himself. What he has been critical of is the trade sanctions, and he said, I'm not going to be bringing in any tough, fake sanctions just for the sake of it. Those were crucial words that had been uttered by Joe Biden at one point of time during one of his campaigns. So again, even Taiwan policy is going to be very, very similar with what Trump administration has been taking forward and taking a proactive step in supporting them with regards to their defense and their ammunition and troops that have been deployed over there. So looking ahead, India and US looking very, very strong, irrespective of whether it is Biden or Trump. Sumit, that's a question for you, yes.
Okay. Ma'am, the point I'm trying to make here is, look, nothing, if you look at a broader scale, a lot of things will not change. I think 80 to 90% of things will be more or the same. But there are 2 or 3 subtle points I want to bring in. You see, when you handle a situation, you have 2 options. One is moderate, one is aggressive. The response of Donald Trump is aggressive, it's not moderate. Point number 2, Mr. Joe Biden has been in the business, rather in the business of politics for 47 years.
Yeah.
I have not seen very powerful and decisive decisions coming from him. What I've seen in last 4 years from Donald Trump, that's point number 3. And then there is a baggage which he carries of this 1.5 billion, which is allegedly paid to his son, which President Donald Trump claims. Now, how does he come clean on that? And I'll take the cue from Ambassador Kapoor, where he said his statements and Kamala Harris' statement is nothing which talks of that kind of aggression for China on Taiwan and vis-a-vis Kashmir. In fact, on Kashmir.
But then again, like you said, he's not that kind of a man. His style is different. He has a softer approach. He's more diplomatic. And that could be compared to our diplomats as well at one point of time. But Shreya, your comments over here.
Compared to that diplomat, Kapoor, not me.
Yes.
So jokes apart, in my opinion, the Democrats will dial down their criticism on 370 and Kashmir.
Yeah,
they must. The official line. In fact, you will start seeing that even as the transition team takes charge, you will start seeing them, beginning to understand, come to grip with the reality, because there is something for the press, there is something for the people, but there is actually the ground realities which the state officials will tell them, this is what the status is, this is what this is, and so on and so forth. So you will start seeing a little bit more matured response from them. But it is the job of the press to make sure that the Democrats be very even-handed in their approach and continue the good work that Donald Trump has done. And maybe there are a few things that they may not want to continue along the lines of what Donald Trump did. Certainly, the corporate tax of 20% that Donald Trump did is a good thing. 35% was just too much. You take a look at the top 500 Fortune 500 companies, almost 90 to 95% had done what is called a tax inversion, meaning what they would do is they would go and pick a small company that is incorporated in Ireland with a 12% corporate tax rate and get a reverse merger done. Meaning like a big, huge behemoth will suddenly be bought over by this small, teeny-weeny company, and then they'll say, now we are incorporated in Ireland, we'll only pay 12% taxes, and so on and so forth. And the United States, which is where the bulk of the technology, the design, the research happens, US was seeing almost nothing in terms of tax revenues. So that part needs to be still addressed. And I hope that the Biden administration, assuming that that's what's going to, because the last word has not been said yet, the fat lady hasn't sung yet. So that is important to know. There are some things that are being revealed one by one, trickling out from the Republican camp, which makes me pause to take a notice of what exactly is it that's going to happen. So the last ball hasn't been bowled yet. Picture baki
but then yes,
so let's see how it
plays. This is conjecture. We are discussing if and when things happen. But Ambassador Deepak Vora, you want to make a comment?
I just wanted to say, ma'am, since we had raised the issue of China, when I was a kid, I used to play a game. My grandkids play it now, in which the intention is to move your 10 pieces through manipulation and maneuvering to the opponent's side, move them all across by reading his mind and doing whatever is required. That game, appropriately, is called Chinese checkers. I rest my case.
I have one point to make.
All right. So those are strong words. Those are very strong words. And
I have a small point to make.
Yes, Sumit.
Meghaji, there was a movie called Red Sun, and what I read about the movie, the word China was replaced by North Korea, and this happened in the Hollywood, and this happened very smoothly. They had the clout to do it. These are the things which worry me.
Okay, all right. And before I wrap up this debate, Ambassador Pradeep, your comments, especially on a lot of criticism with regards to, Trump going ahead and being an aggressor with regards to initiating the economy. He has started off businesses. The economy was doing really, really well. The stock market was performing fantastically well till the pandemic hit. And Joe Biden's critics have been calling it a socialist, Marxist approach that has been brought about by the Democrats. How is that going to witness even when it comes to the foreign policies, not just in South Asia, but with other countries? Because if that's the kind of approach that the Democrats are going to take, it's perhaps going to hit the economy within and outside as well.
Well, Trump had a very different approach when it comes to the economy, in the sense that all the past, steps which the United States was taking, he sort of reversed many of those vis-a-vis the economy. Instead of being a globalist, he sort of looked at it as a nationalist and said that we have to do everything in terms of cutting off our dependence on foreign trade, or having a balance of payments which is like very massively negative towards the US. So NAFTA, for example, you have a lot of trade with the neighbors in most countries of the world. So Mexico and Canada had this North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement. He rubbished that agreement. He made a new agreement which is called US, Mexico, Canada. So that is entirely different from the drafting of NAFTA. So in so many ways, he sort of went, backwards in time in terms of globalization, but tried to create more jobs for the Americans, tried to give a lot of impetus to the local economy, and the results which came in just 3 days back, which showed that there had been a 31% recovery in the US economy, came in maybe a little too late for his own team and the Republicans and his comfort and the election process. Because already you had about 100 million votes being cast by postal ballots and in advance voting. And economy and daily existence and jobs plays a very, very important role in almost all elections in most countries of the world. In US, it plays an even more important role than in other countries. And the same news coming in earlier would have made a lot of difference to the voting pattern. But that being said, he has changed the context of free market systems, the understanding, the implementation, World Trade Organization, which the Americans were using in a positive way, Now they go ahead and lodge complaints against other countries there all the time. So there's a lot of change which has happened.
Okay, let's hope all positive things happen. Let's hope also constructive things happen if Joe Biden were to come to power and the Democrats were to retain their leadership in the United States. I thank all my guests for joining me on this very special broadcast. We'll have you back tomorrow discussing US elections because it's still not over. Those crucial votes are going to be counted. We have another 24 hours to go till Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin get counted.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.